Welcome to Manhua Mantra, where stories come to life through words and imagination. Today we dive into the thrilling world of Magic Emperor, exploring the twists and turns of Chapter 632. If you enjoy the story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Also, drop a comment below to share your thoughts or theories about this chapter. Now let's get started. 1, 2, 1, 2. Under the bright sun, a group of people trudged along a wide road. Their movements were stiff and awkward, almost painful to watch. To an outsider, they might have looked like patients struggling with polio. These unfortunate souls were disciples of the demon scheming sect, cursed by Zhuofan after consuming the zombie pill. What had started as a group of over a dozen, disciples was now less than 10. Despite their reduced numbers, the determination etched on their stiff faces remained strong. They had witnessed firsthand the horrific transformation of their comrades, turning to solid rock before the wind scattered their ashes. None of them wanted to meet the same grim fate. For heaven's sake, Zhuofan is brutal. Stop moving even for a moment and you're dead. Grueling spoke through gritted teeth, his every step sounding like his bones were on the verge of snapping. Turning his head slightly, he called out, "Ganger, how are you holding up?" I don't know how much longer I can do this," Qingcheng replied, his voice trembling. 10 days without cultivation. I feel like I'm dying. Now I understand what it means to live a life worse than death. The others groaned in agreement, their faces miserable. Every one of them silently cursed Zhuofan and his ancestors for their suffering. Grueling clenched his jaw. "Don't give up, Ganger. Stopping isn't an option. You saw what happened to the others." "I know, Dad, but this is insane. He expects us to drag ourselves all the way to the Double Dragon gathering like this." Qingcheng's voice cracked, tears brimming in his eyes. Grueling sighed deeply. He was only pushing through for his son. If it weren't for Ganger, he'd have given up long ago. From a nearby cliff, Zhuofan stood watching the group with an unsettling calm. Flanked by the venerables, Fiend Yang's frown deepened. Haven't they suffered enough? If this keeps up, we won't have any disciples left to take to the gathering. "I don't need them," Zhuofan replied coldly. "If they can't endure, they're not worth saving. Weaklings deserve no mercy." He smirked, gesturing toward the struggling disciples. "Besides, look at them now. They've got the hang of it. That's what I call progress." The venerables exchanged uneasy glances. "Progress? All they've done is learn to limp forward without collapsing. They're practically mortals now," another added. "Their limits are nearly reached. A short break would help them recover." Zhuofan raised an eyebrow, his smile sharp. "A break, huh? Are you sure about that? The Double Dragon gathering is just around the corner." Fiend Yang hesitated. "A few hours won't hurt, right?" "Fine," Zhuofan relented, pointing toward a distant town. "Let's rest there." The venerables nodded, though suspicion lingered in their eyes. Zhuofan's sudden kindness felt unnatural. Descending to the disciples, Zhuofan announced, "Congratulations. Thanks to the venerables' pleas, I've decided to grant you a rest. There's a town up ahead. Let's head there." Relief washed over the group, their eyes lighting up with hope. After 10 grueling days, a break was a godsend. "Let's move!" Zhuofan barked. Driven by the promise of rest, the disciples quickened their stiff steps. Though they still moved like puppets on rusty strings, their pace improved slightly. After an hour, the group arrived at the town. It was eerily quiet. No people, no animals, no sound. The lifelessness of the place sent shivers down their spines. "This place feels wrong," one of the venerables muttered. "We shouldn't stay here long." "Relax," Zhuofan replied casually. "We're just here to rest. Let's find a tavern." Leading the way, Zhuofan pushed open the doors of a dusty tavern. Inside, the air was thick with neglect. Chairs and tables were coated in a fine layer of grime. "No staff, huh?" "Well, help yourselves," Zhuofan said, taking a seat. The disciples groaned inwardly but obeyed. Too exhausted to protest, they shuffled about. Fetching food and drinks for themselves, the venerables joined Zhuofan at a table, their spiritual senses probing the surroundings. "This town's been abandoned for at least 2 weeks, one noted. "It feels like the work of a rogue demonic cultivator." Zhuofan nodded. "Probably one that preys on mortals. Nothing to worry about." With a toast, Zhuofan raised his cup. "To progress. We've overcome the first stage of training." The group clinked their cups half-heartedly, eager to savor the brief respite. After the meal, Zhuofan stood abruptly. "Break's over. Time to move!" The disciples tried to rise, but couldn't. Their bodies were frozen, stiff as statues. "What's happening?" one venerable stammered. Zhuo Fan smirked. Didn't I tell you? The zombie pill requires constant movement. Resting resets your progress. Shock turned to despair as the disciples realized they were back to square one. You tricked us. Guilang shouted, his voice shaking with fury. Zhuo Fan's smirk widened. Did I? I merely allowed you to follow the Venerable's suggestion. This is on them, not me. Guilang seethed, trembling with rage. But no matter how much they cursed or glared, they were powerless to act. Suddenly, a red blade flashed through the air, hurtling toward Zhuo Fan's throat. And in that moment, every frozen disciple thought the same thing. We were just imagining it, right? Whoosh! The red sword was at Zhuo Fan's throat, the bloodlust intense enough to make everyone shiver. Zhuo Fan's heart tightened, but he quickly raised his hand to stop the sword. The girl holding it was a young 20-year-old with big eyes. She struck with surprising power for someone at the 5th layer radiant stage, but it was no match for Zhuo Fan. With a shake of his hand, the girl was sent flying into a table. Zhuo Fan grabbed the sword, his icy gaze fixed on her. The 3 fiends of hell laughed behind him, sipping their drinks like it was no big deal. No one, not even a sneaky radiant stage cultivator, could best Zhuo Fan. The trio continued mocking the girl's weak, overconfident attack. Clang! Zhuo Fan knocked the sword aside, eyeing it with a grin. A 6th grade spiritual weapon. Well made, but the owner doesn't know how to use it. The girl glared at him, furious. Zhuo Fan smiled at her. What's the deal? Attacking me when you're so weak? The audience laughed, even the frozen disciples mocking her stubbornness. The girl, ignoring the mocking, shot back, Who are you? Where is our young master? Give him back! Zhuo Fan and the Venerables exchanged a look. We just got here 2 hours ago. How could we have taken someone we don't even know? The girl wasn't convinced. Liar, who else could it be? Despicable demonic cultivators. Her words angered the disciples, but they were too stiff to do anything. Zhuo Fan shrugged and smiled. See that? A righteous cultivator, so self-righteous. What would you do if someone like this accused you? They muttered things like kill her and torture her, but Zhuo Fan stopped them. Hold on, let her join your club. The disciples grinned, enjoying the thought of her suffering like they had. Zhuo Fan turned to the girl with a wide grin. She panicked. What are you doing? He laughed sinisterly. Just giving you a taste of demonic cultivator's work, he. She shuddered, fear in her eyes, and bolted for the door. Zhuo Fan appeared in front of her, grabbing her shoulder with a crack, making her cry out. He took out a pill and held it in front of her. Take it and you won't feel the pain. Since, dumb people don't feel it anyway. Be good and I'll take care of you. The girl stared at the pill, fear rising in her. What is this? Did you use it on the young master too? Zhuo Fan laughed. You'll see what hell feels like soon enough. The girl screamed, Help, sister, help me! Go ahead, scream. No one will save you now, Zhuo Fan taunted. The 3 fiends laughed, enjoying the scene. Suddenly, a cold shout cut through the air. A woman in white with long, fine hair appeared in the doorway. Everyone froze. The woman was stunning. Zhuo Fan turned, sensing the 8th layer radiant stage behind him, but didn't care. When he saw her, his voice faltered. Chu Qingcheng? The thunder ring flickered as Chu Qingcheng stepped forward. Sister Qingcheng, the girl cried, rushing to her side. Zhuo Fan let her go as the girl clung to Chu Qingcheng. He's horrible. He took our young master and sister. Chu Qingcheng smiled at Zhuo Fan. I see. You're still picking on girls, Steward Zhuo. Zhuo Fan scratched his nose, not meeting her gaze. I wasn't sorry for her. She blamed me, so I was teaching her a lesson. Everyone looked stunned. Zhuo Fan, the usually ruthless and calculated man, was now admitting to something. They all exchanged glances, unsure what to make of it. Chu Qingcheng smiled, and Danner couldn't believe her eyes. Zhuo Fan shifted uncomfortably, his usual cold demeanor faltering under her gaze. Zhuo Fan, are you saying it's all her fault? Chu Qingcheng asked. Zhuo Fan flicked his head away. Of course. She came accusing me. And what about me? Chu Qingcheng raised an eyebrow. Well, the others were speechless. The conversation felt absurd. It seemed like they were just teasing each other, but there was an odd warmth to it. They couldn't